Thank you for joining into today's webinar. This is a spotlight webinar today, so I'm going to be diving into our form builder. So we've got an exciting new look for everyone, and I'm going to give you a rundown on best practice around form building using all the great tools in SafeFood Pro so you can create and customize your own forms. My name is Michael. If I haven't met you yet, I'm account manager here at SafeFood. So yeah, really excited to jump into it. Jump into a quick agenda here. So perfect. Today's schedule, I'm going to be diving into our new form builder shortly. We're also going to be running you through some of our great question types and explaining sections, and so you can understand everything at your disposal here. So we're going to customize and create some new forms. After the live demo, we're going to have an open Q&A session. So any of your questions here, you'll be able to ask them, and we'll be able to answer them now. And then finally, we'll wrap up with some support and success resources. In the background here, you may have noticed we've got Josh Winthrop as well. He's part of our support team, and he's going to be managing the chat as well. So if you've got questions throughout the webinar, feel free to type them in either the chat or the kind of Q&A option as well. Cool. Just for some context before we kick off as well, for our New Zealand customers, this release is already live in your admin console. So the next time you go to, make a new form or edit any existing forms here, you'll be able to see this in your account immediately. For our Australian and international customers, this is coming out later in the week. Perfect. Let's jump into it. So hopefully you're all familiar with the two sides of SafeFood Pro here. On the left side of my screen, we've got the admin console. So this is accessible via a web browser. The user roles that have access to this are administrators and managers. And this is where you would go to customize any of your setup. So adding in suppliers, adding in equipment, adjusting forms, and also during an audit or verification. And this is where you would go to find any of your reports as well. On the left side of my screen, you can see a much more simpler version of SafeFood Pro. So this is the mobile app. So this is where your staff go to complete your daily, weekly, and monthly forms for that kind of scheduled compliance and completion rates there as well. And so that's on the right side of my screen. So customers that have access to forms on the web will have a similar view to what I've got on the right as well. Cool. Now, on the admin dashboard, so by default, it takes you to the dashboard here, and I just want to focus on the Forms tab today. So I'm going to be explaining exactly what all of these boxes mean, and so if there's anything unclear, hopefully we'll get that clarified for you today. Cool. Think of this page here as a register for all of the forms you have available at your disposal. You'll notice we've got some iconography on the left side of my screen here. And so what this means is if it's got a SafeFood Pro logo on here, that's part of our master form template. So some of the customers here, you'll know that when you go through that food plan and we ask you our wizard of questions, some of these forms are made available for your account, and they're forms that we provide and we update to let you either completely use or customize from there. For those of you who are in kind of big hospitality groups as well, you may also have some group forms with this little icon here. And then further down, you'll be able to see some of these forms have no icon at all. And so this indicates that it is a custom form for this site here as well. Cool. Don't need to be too concerned with the IDs, but the naming convention here, hopefully you're all familiar with the types of forms that you need to go and complete. Our master forms provide a pretty solid skeleton to base a lot of your custom forms off. But if you have a more detailed and more thorough food control plan, we highly recommend customizing our existing forms and creating some of your own ones as well. The next column here are user groups. I won't dive too deeply. I'll come back to user groups later on. But essentially, you're able to assign a set of users to a set of forms so that they don't need to see each other. So if you've got multiple departments as well working on the same site, on the same food control plan on this account, you're able to kind of divide them up like so. Cool. This version number is just an indication of how many times you've edited this form here. So if I've got a form that I've made and I've saved it a few more times, then we can see that this one is on version 3, and some of the other ones might be on a later version as well. The next column here we've got are form types. So some of these are hard-coded, especially for our master forms here, or coded at group level. But the custom forms here as well, when you make per your account, will be under custom too. The next column we've got is the scheduling of the form. So you guys will be aware that you have daily, weekly, and monthly forms that you'll need to complete. And this column is really great because we can determine, which forms have been put on a schedule. And so we'll be able to see that reflected on the mobile app. Quick tip here as well, you can actually double click this button here. And so it's going to filter by all the forms that you've got scheduled. So you can quickly see the exact forms that you've got and the exact forms your staff will see on their phones or on their tablets as well. Cool, you can see we've got some weekly forms scheduled, some monthly forms. This one's actually scheduled for, once every 3 months. And then we've got some daily forms scheduled as well. Perfect. On the right side, you'll see a few extra buttons for you to adjust and customize these forms here. And so you've got this little edit icon. I won't jump into it just yet, but this is where you would go to have a look at the form. So look at its form settings, to adjust its schedule, to add or take away any of the questions. This is what you would do to open up a form. The next icon here, this little box icon, it's a duplicate. So if you have an existing form here, whether it's one of the master forms or one of the forms that you've made yourself, and you just want to create a second version of this form, maybe for a slightly different department, and you like the layout of the previous form, what you can do is you can quickly click this button, and it's going to copy the entire settings and the entire layout and all the questions of an existing form, and then you can make additional tweaks and save it as a new form as well. Now, there's an extra functionality here. You'll be able to see this one here. It's a revert icon. So if you've adjusted directly any of our master forms and, you do want to, maybe you didn't like the changes that you made or they weren't necessary and you want to revert it back to a master form here, we've got this little icon so you can do so as well. So this end of day closing checklist, I've customized it a little bit. If I want to revert it, I can simply do this. Cool, and you can see we've got that Safe Food Pro logo back on here. So this is the master version of this form that you'll be using here. And for any custom forms, we've got this little bin icon as well on the right. So if you've made some forms there that you may no longer need or you don't want on your forms register, you hit this little bin icon and that'll be able to delete it as well. There's one additional section that I'll show you too. So sometimes you may want to completely hide a form. So you don't want it accessible at anywhere, but maybe you're just testing a new form, or maybe you've made a great form and you just don't want to delete that. You can actually hide the forms there. I will show you how to do this, but to find any hidden forms here, we've got this toggle on the top right. So show unused forms here. If I check this toggle, you can see we've got a couple of forms that have been hidden away, and you've got this, little red triangle icon as well. And so what that means is it's not accessible on the mobile app. No one is able to find or complete it, but you've got a copy of this form that's still saved on this account. It's just hidden away. Cool. Now that we've got, some of the iconography sorted and you understand what you're looking at with this forms register, let's dive into the new form builder. So there's kind of two ways that you can create a new form in Safe Food Pro. We can either customize existing ones, we can duplicate them, or we can start really from scratch as well. So I'm going to start from scratch here. So you'll click the top left icon, this little plus button here, to add a custom form. Cool. So for our existing customers, we've built some forms before. This is a completely new look that we're kind of implementing as well for the film builder. So it looks a lot more clean. It's a bit more of a modern design, and we're really making the most of our kind of web elements here now that it's taking up the whole kind of screen. So there's a couple of new boxes that if you've got eagle eyes, you'll be able to spot out immediately. But I'll just go from top down and explain a couple of things in this form builder that you will need to understand when you're making forms and adjusting them. So by default here, we've got a form name that is required. So you should set something unique for this form here. So I'm just going to call it a demo form. And then we've got this thing called a form category. Now, we have a bunch of categories that we recommend for you to add a particular form to. If it's a cooking test, put it under the cooking one. If it's a cleaning form or an opening form, we've got categories for those. Now, some of these categories are quite important because they relate to the reporting side. So you'll be able to filter by these categories, if you were to show an auditor or verify any of these forms here. So I highly recommend having a look at the categories that you've got here. Now, if there's no particular thing that this pertains to, we can set it to a task. But if it's a training form, definitely put it under the training category. If it's something that requires escalation, put it under the troubleshooting or incident categories. I'm going to select task for this one here. And that's kind of the bare minimum that we need to get started on a form. Cool. You'll notice that the form settings is a new kind of column that we've tucked away now. Previously in the old form builder, this was at the top of every form and it had all the settings for the form there. So how to schedule it, how to make reminders and escalations on this section here. It's now in this form settings box. Let me open this up and I'll take you through some of the options that we have in the form settings. Firstly, at the top, we can make this form a quiz. So when you're making a new form here, we can actually make this kind of a quiz that you can use to train your staff on, and they can score, up to 100% on as well. Now, the thing to note here is if we do make it a quiz, it locks your questions to either yes or no, or multi-choice options. So because it's trying to track correct answers. So just be wary when you're making your first quiz, that's what the quizzes will look like. I'll show you maybe a demonstration at the end if we've got some time of a completed quiz, so you can get some further understanding there. The next toggle that we've got is the form library. So what this is any of your forms that aren't on a schedule. So let's say your troubleshooting forms that you don't complete every day, not every day that you have an incident, touch wood, but these forms are saved in this little form library on the mobile app. So if you have a look to the right side of my screen, we've got daily forms by default. We've got some weekly forms scheduled, and then we have a monthly form as well set up for any of those, calibration and monthly reviews. Now, what happens when we have forms that we don't set on a schedule, but we still have available in your account? These are available in the ad hoc form section or the form library via this green plus button on the bottom right. Cool. Here we can see the remainder of all of our form registers, so that are still available for your team to complete. And this is where you would go to find something like an ad hoc form in the form library here. If you turn the toggle off, it will not be available in this section. Cool. Next, we have the description. So this is for internal or admin users in particular. So it doesn't show up on your reports. It also doesn't show up on the forms for your users as well. It's purely kind of an internal documentation. So if you have some, let's say some HACCP codes that you need to write in particular to this form here, you can add it to this description box. Scrolling down, we've got the attribution. So this is actually a really powerful feature. What you can do is you can paste a link into here, and it's going to be available on the top of your form here. So something like a link to a guide, a link to an SOP, or a link to a YouTube training video, something like that. You can paste it in here, and it's going to be available at the top of the form for people to click and access before they go through the rest of the form. Next is a form statistic group. So by default, we have a couple of buckets that we customize. So if you're familiar with the dashboard, at the very top, there are some colored buckets as well that pull through, your inductions. I'll show you what we've got here. Inductions, deliveries, sickness, complaints, and incidents. These are customizable. So if you have particular forms you want to track, every time someone completes a form, you want to do a counter for it, you'll be able to assign it here. Next, we've got form completion notifications. So as the indication, so email completed forms to, and you can pop in an email address here on the bottom. So what this means is anytime someone completes a form and saves it, the completed form gets fired off to an inbox. Now, that sounds great. It's a very powerful tool, but I wouldn't recommend setting this up for every single form in your account. You're just going to be really overloading one person's inbox in here. The best use case I've seen for it is something like a customer complaints form to always be sent to something like a compliance manager, and this is a really good way to use that tool. Next, and this is a really crucial box, we've got the form completion schedule. So this is where we would go to set the kind of daily, weekly, or monthly scheduling of this form. So if I wanted to make this a daily form to be completed at least once a day, we can see it opens up the scheduling of this form here. By default, we have it scheduled to 12 p.m., so midday. If you want to customize the time, or if you want this form to be completed multiple times throughout the day, all you would do is you would select a slightly different time. Let's say I want this form to be done at 9 a.m. We go and hit the plus button. What this means is when I publish this form, it's going to be required and scheduled at 9 a.m. and 12 p.m. as well. If I then decided, actually, I don't want it at the midday, I can just simply delete it from there. Next, we've got days of the week. So it's a daily form there, but maybe you don't, receive deliveries on the weekends, or maybe you don't even operate on Sundays and Mondays, for example. And so if you're really concerned about getting that completion rate to 100%, on days that you don't operate, what you can do is you can uncheck, Saturday and Sunday, so that that won't be available, and you'll have 100% completion rates for those days as well if it wasn't required. Cool. Next on the bottom here, we've got some alarms here. So two kind of reminders that we can offer for scheduling in this form here. So let's say it was due at 9 a.m. We can set a little alarm to go off, 15 minutes before. It's a notification on your phone or on a shared tablet that you've got. And so if I wanted to create my own reminder setting, I can type in some text here, but I can select it to go off 5, 15, or 30 minutes as well. So you get a little buzz right before the form is due to be completed. Similarly, we've got escalations, so you can save escalation messages, and this is really powerful because we can actually set email escalations as well. So if this form hasn't been completed after your allocated time, so we can select 15, an hour, 4 hours after a form has been missed, someone could be notified as well by email that this form hasn't been completed. And then at the bottom, it's once again those user groups I was mentioning outside here. So we can actually select which user group has access to this form here. I'm going to do a further dive on user groups towards the end, but in this instance, I've got a few demonstrations. So we've got some front of house forms and some front of house staff that don't need to see back of house forms and back of house staff and their kind of compliance. And then I've got manager as well. So if this form was just for the manager, for example, I'd select this, and only the manager users would have access to view and complete this form. Cool. So that's all of the form settings that we have at the moment. You guys will be familiar with this if you've made some forms before here, but we really wanted to tidy this up. And so this is the new look that we have going as well. We can close up the form settings, and we can get into really the meat and potatoes of what we do, which is, making questions, section headers, collapsible panels, etc. I'm going to dive into those really quickly using another demonstration form here. But the great thing that we have implemented now as well is we can actually save forms as a draft before they go live and before they're available for anyone to view. So you'll notice on the top right here, we've got publish, so this makes this form live. Now, I don't have any questions in this form here, so I probably don't want this available anywhere. It's just going to be a blank form. But if I, really like the settings and I've made a couple of questions, but, I just didn't have time to wrap up, maybe it was a really big form here, what I can do is I can save it as a draft. Cool. So we can see now here, we've got this draft as a form. It's scheduled to be on a daily basis, but this won't come up on my mobile app until I've published this form as well. So a really nice kind of quality of life feature here so that you can kind of manage some drafts. If you're building a lot of forms or a lot of long forms, this is just a really helpful tool that we've implemented now. So you can do this. You can see I've got some other drafts as well loaded here. Cool. I want to demonstrate one particular form here and go through some really common answer types as well in the form builder. So I'm going to show you what this looks like, both on the admin console and on the mobile app. So I've called this the form builder breakdown. And you can see if I want to view this form here, I'm going to click this little pencil icon on the right. Perfect. Cool. Now that we're in this section, you can see a couple of boxes here. The form settings have been tucked away, and then we jump straight into the bulk of the form, the questions, the sections, and the panels here. And so this is how you would kind of manage what your forms look like and what your staff go and complete. And I'm going to cover off some just really common and useful answer types that we recommend and give some best practice on form building too. A couple of other things that we've implemented as well, just for you to view. We've got actually form analytics on the right side here. And so what it does is it takes a quick look at your form and it gives an estimate for you. And so it's saying, hey, look, there might be a lot of questions on this form. This is roughly how long it's going to take for a new staff member to complete this form. And so we really want our customers, when they're building forms or when they're customizing our forms, to build them in a way that's easy for their staff to complete. The last thing your staff want is to sit down on and do 40 minutes of, form completions every day, especially if you're trying to do the change management from paper. And so it just incentivizes you to, kind of shorten the length of your forms or make them more simple, depending on the answer type that you choose. Cool. Another useful feature here as well that we've implemented is actually previewing the forms here. Now, this is only available for teams that are on our premium pack, so it's not available for every pack. But if you have access to forms on the web here, and I want to have a quick look at this form as I'm building it, I can click this little eye icon. It'll log me in, and it will show me this form here. So I get a quick look at exactly what I'm building. And so I'll be able to make adjustments from there as well. Cool. I'm going to show you what this form looks like on the mobile app, and then we can have demonstration side by side. Perfect. Right. Let's jump into it. So on the form builder, you'll notice a few different areas where you can set up new sections and new panels as well. So I can look at any of these individual panels, and they represent little boxes on the mobile app / this form, and that's how it kind of looks like as well. We'll go through all of these kind of individually and really briefly, but to add a new section of any of these, we can look to the left side of our screen, the top side, and also if you're at the bottom of the form adding questions, all of these boxes are available for you here. So it's just taking advantage of the extra real estate that we have, so you can really easily add new questions as well. Another great feature that we have too is you can add questions with the answer type tied into it directly. So if you know exactly what kind of answer type that you want, and I'll go into these shortly, what we can do is we can add a question with this answer type immediately instead of needing to select the answer type or duplicate them like we did before. Cool, perfect. Right. I'm going to go into a couple of the panels now. So here we've got the information panel. So if I want to view or make any adjustments to the text I have got in here, I would simply open up this question. And if I'm happy with it, I can collapse it away like so. Cool. So this information panel is just a kind of instruction box as well. And this is what it will look like on the mobile app. So any information around maybe SOPs or guidelines or some quick tips on completing this form here, we can add it in this text box here, and it's going to show up on the mobile app like so. Cool. If I want to add an additional information panel, you can see we've got this little duplicate icon here. So if I want to add another box of instructions, I can simply click this duplicate icon, and you can see it's copied the question like so above, and then I can add in additional bits of information here as well. If I then also don't want this panel anymore, similar to all the other ones, I can click this little bin icon, and that would delete that question. Next, I'll jump into a collapsible panel. This is kind of similar to the instruction text, but it has a little bit more of a color-coded kind of orange box on the mobile app, and you're able to adjust the header as well. So it doesn't just say instructions, you're able to change the text of this, and you're able to add in further explanations or guides here. So this is something that your staff will be able to click on the mobile app. Let's say you have a lot of recipe guidance or some compliant temperature ranges that you want your staff to be able to refer to. You can click on this collapsible panel, and it's going to open up for them here like so. Cool. To rearrange questions and panels on the kind of admin console as well, let's say you wanted the collapsible panel first, all we would need to do is it's a very simple drag and drop. So if you hold your cursor over here, we can move this up. So when I hit save and publish this form here, the collapsible panel is now going to be on the top. Switch that back. Great. All right, moving on. We've got section headers. Now, this might sound quite vague, but section headers are just a great tool for you to be able to categorize sections of your form and basically group a bunch of questions up. This is what it looks like on the mobile app. You can see it creates a bit of a distinction here, and then all these questions will fall under this section. I've got another section here as well, and it just allows you to break up a form and make it more clear for your staff to complete. I'll go into some of these options a little bit further down the line, but you can basically put in the section header that you want and the text that you want here as well. Now we're going to go into question types. In Save Pro, we have over, I think, 35, and we're adding to it every release, different answer types that you can have for questions here. And I just want to go through some of the really common ones that are really quite useful, and maybe some to avoid as well, if you are building your own custom form. So if we wanted to add a new question at any point here, let's say I wanted to just add a short text question. It's popped up here. We can pop in the question text. We can add in a little bit of a prompt as well, so a bit of guidance on answering this form here. And then we've got this little short text. By default, it's short text as well if you just add a blank new question, but we can change the way we want the staff to answer the question by adjusting the answer type. So we've got a lot built in here, but I'm going to go through, like I said, some of the most useful ones as well. If I don't want any of this question, I'm just going to delete it quickly, but I'll demonstrate what these ones do on the mobile app. Cool. I open up this question here. This one here is a multi-line text. What that means is, on the mobile app, if I go to answer this question, I'm a staff member completing this form, and I click into here, it's going to take me to this multi-line text box. So I can put in up to 2,000 characters as well, if I needed to. Now, this is actually something that might ring some alarm bells immediately. You know, you don't want your staff to be typing in incredibly long paragraphs as well into this. So we only actually recommend multi-line text if you're very confident that this is a long form and you require a lot of detail in here. So if it's, you know, a checklist form that you want to create, we would avoid the multi-line text option here. What you also might notice is I've got this little red triangle on the top right. What that means is this little toggle for the question. This has been set to a required question. What that means is in order to save and complete this form, I must answer this question. So I have to give some input into this form, into this question, in order to save this form. So I'll show you what this looks like. I put in some text here and I hit save. You'll notice on the bottom right, I've got 1 out of 2. So I can save this form as a draft, but I can't actually complete this form. Why is that? It's because we have one other required question at the bottom here. So until I've done at the minimum the 2 required questions, I cannot fully save and complete this form. Cool. Couple of other options here. If you like the layout of a question and you like the the way you've asked it and you just want to duplicate it, very quickly, once again, you can duplicate this question or you can bin it if you don't like it. We have some options with alarms here, but best practice, we actually recommend setting escalations in the form as a whole, as opposed to individual questions. Cool. We'll jump into a really helpful answer type instead. So maybe instead of a multi-line text, maybe you've got something like a checklist as well, like an operational form, where you need to go through a bunch of things and check them off and whether they're done or not. So in this instance, I'm going to be demonstrating yes/no plus reason. Now, this is really good and it sounds complicated, but what it means is if I say yes to this question, and I've given an example, all bathrooms cleaned and sanitized, if I say yes, that's what the system is expecting. And so, cool, it's happy with the yes here. Now, we do plus reason, and what that means is if I say, actually, no, not all the bathrooms are cleaned and sanitized, I say no here, immediately it's going to pop up with this little warning box and prompting your staff to add a reason. And so what this means is if you structure your questions in a way that if they say no to something, they need to give a reason, it's just a way for your staff to easily log, what we call blue notes or create corrective actions and escalations if they weren't able to do something from there. So this yes, no reason at the bare minimum is prompting your staff to, achieve that minimum level of compliance and type in a quick reason as to why this wasn't done. So let's say, not in use today. We can actually escalate this to a corrective action. Let's say, there was a big leak in one of the bathrooms. We can click this option right here and create a corrective action and assign it to staff members, set it to a high priority and set due dates as well from this section here. But if we jump out, as long as, and you'll be able to see this little blue icon here, As long as we've logged a reason as to why we have said no, then the form allows you to move on from this question. So you're achieving this great level of minimum compliance where you're encouraging your staff to be comfortable logging quick notes and exceptions as well, which verifiers and auditors really love to see. On the topic of Blue Notes, you'll notice on the bottom left on the mobile app here, we've got this Blue Note icon before they go and save the form. And without exception, available in every form here, before we go to save it, if we want to just log an additional note or an additional comment somewhere, we can click this Blue Note icon on the bottom left. And here you can see we can record any additional notes or actions that have been taken when you were completing this form, and we can also escalate it to a corrective action in here. So we've really made this a core part of completing your forms in Safe Food. And so if you're doing, operational instructions to the team and you want them to log a lot of blue notes as well, definitely show them this feature here. You'll also notice after I've answered this question here, I'm able to add like an image, or I'm able to add in additional notes here as well. So if I click this little icon, I can add in a note, another further note, another further action from this here. And also this little icon here just allows me to take an image of something as well. Let's say I just wanted to prove some evidence of what I was saying here on a tablet. It's going to open up to the camera, but on forms on the web, it's going to ask me to upload a file as well. So this is only available for certain packs, but on the tablet, they snap a quick picture instead of uploading a file. Oh, sorry, we'll hop out of this one. Yeah, it's asking me to sign. Not a very unique pin. Hopefully you guys have something more secure. So let me get out of this screen here. Oh, let me answer this question too. Cool. Now, the thing about the yes, no plus reason is we actually have a lot of different ways to lay these questions out as well. This is the main one that we recommend using, but you'll notice we've got yes, no, NA, no, yes plus reason, and we've got also NA baked in there as well. So a lot of flexibility as well, but just keep in mind the wording of your question. You want it to be correct, so you don't want staff to be logging in warning notes when they've actually done the right answer type. Cool. The next section down, we've got multi-choice, multi-select. We can just have simple multi-choices here, but we can customize any of the options in here. So when your staff go and complete this on the mobile app and they click this, they can select as many options as they want. Or if it's just a multi-choice, it would just be selecting one option here. This is really useful if you have a couple of different, let's say you want to select the department that you work in, and just have these listed instead of typing them out. You can have them just use this multi-choice, multi-select option here instead. Couple of our other really powerful answer types here. So as you guys know, when you were setting up your Safe Food Pro account, we populated your equipment list on site. That's your fridge, freezers, hot holding, temperature probes, any equipment you want to maintain. And so we can actually directly populate that information into a form. So we'd use this equipment list select from answer type. And now you can see when I jump into this question here, it's populated from my freezers, my fridges, and I've got a probe that I can select from as well. So let's say this was a calibration form or a maintenance form, for example, you're able to populate that equipment list from here and select which piece of equipment that this is relevant to. Very similar thing here. We've actually got resources. Now there's two different ways I've populated a resource from here. And so by default, if you're a part of our standard plan and you have some of our MPI resources, that'll be available for your account here. But we've got two options. Resources select from, so it's just like that equipment list. If I click into the resources select from here, it gives me all of the resources in my account, and I can select a resource that I've been kind of using to train on. For example, if I was learning allergens in this case, or if I was relying on the New Zealand Simply Safe and Suitable Food Control Plan template, I can select that resource here. The other thing I can do is I can actually select a resource as well. So it kind of populates in the form like so. It already has the eye icon in here. So if I want someone to view a particular resource, all I would do is I would select that resource in here. And if I click this view icon when I complete the form, firstly, it will load up this resource as well on your device. Secondly, you'll notice after I clicked on it, it's showing a little green icon here. So the form has actually tracked the fact that I've clicked on this resource, and that's kind of me signing off that I've read it as well. Next, we've got supplier list. So very same terminology, supplier list, select from. If you're familiar with our receiving delivery forms, if you've made a form like this before yourself, you'll notice this is what we have when we populate the supplier information. So very similar to the other kind of columns here, you'll be able to choose from your supplier list that you've uploaded, whether it's a goods or services provider here. And so let's say I was getting some things from, Bastion Bakery. That populates it here. And so it saves me from having to type out the information every single time. Cool. This one here is really important for some of your kind of cooking, reheating, and cooling, and all of those kind of food-related temperature forms. So we've got actually a really strong answer type called numeric. Now, as it suggests, it's prompting your staff to type in a number of some sort. So what we can do is I've set this one to this is what it will look like if it's blank, but we can set the unit. Now we've loaded some units in here by default, things like temperature, weight, volume. You can have no unit, but the great thing about SafeFood Pro is how customizable we are. So if you have a particular unit you want, let's say something like pH that you're trying to measure, what you can do is you can hit this custom unit and you can set it to pH as a unit, and that's what it will show up like on the mobile app. I've selected temperature here. I've selected the precision to be 1 decimal place here. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to set some warnings and limits. When I open this up, you'll get this little bar here as well. And so how to think about it here is the maximum and minimum staff values that the staff can enter. And then we have a compliant temperature range that we want the staff to be within. And so that might sound a little bit abstract. So I'll show you what this kind of looks like on the mobile app shortly, but we can even customize the warning messages if they're above or below the compliant temperatures that we've set. So if, for example, this was a reheating or a cooking form, it needs to hit above 74, 75 degrees Celsius. This answer type has been set here. So we can see, because I've selected temperature, it's given me degrees C as the unit. I can also select Fahrenheit if I so wish as well and make that the default. But if I do, if I'm checking a piece of item and I've cooked it and I'm doing a temperature check, and I say 78 degrees C, the system is really happy. That's within a compliant temperature range. So I can just go and save that temperature check here. If, for example, it wasn't 78 degrees C, if I cooked it and I did the check and it was still just kind of around 70, show you what this looks like. You guys will be quite familiar with this, but here's the warning message again. And so it's just saying, hey, that's not really what the system is expecting again. There's a warning here. We can customize this warning note as well. And you'd have to log a quick reason as to why this temperature was outside of that compliant range. And you can, once again, escalate this to a corrective action here. So if I was cooking something, for example, I might type in a not up to temp, cooked for further, something like that. So I confirm this, then you can see, oh, sorry, somehow this has become negative. Cool. So because I've added a staff note here, this temperature reading, it'll allow me to save through as well. So it's giving an exception in here. What I can do as well is I can actually go back to this form here and resubmit a temperature as well. So let's say I cooked it for a further 5 minutes, and I'm going to update this now. And now it's 79 degrees. I still have this little blue note here, but I'm just saving the most updated temperature that we've got. Cool. This numeric kind of question type is super, super, super powerful, really handy to keep your staff within, the compliant ranges that you need to set them to. And so have a play around with this one in particular. I think it'll be really quite useful, but I'm going to show you how to customize some existing forms as well so you don't go in completely blind. Great. All right. Moving on. We've got another section header here. So I kind of glossed over this little toggle before, but this is what we would use in a repeating section. So as I mentioned before, section headers, the way to think about it is grouping a bunch of questions together. Now, what does that mean? For example, here, I've got a use case of, let's say I needed to sign off on this form and multiple people needed to sign off on this form here. So I've set someone to type in their name, and then we've got an answer type that allows people to put a signature capture here. So let's say I've got a staff member that wants to sign off on this form. Let's say his name's AJ. Excuse my handwriting here. Cool. You can see he's signed off on this form here. But now that I've answered some questions in this section, this little box becomes active. So what that means is I can actually add a new section and it will allow this whole above, like the question sandwich within the section header to repeat in itself. So now someone else can come in. Let's say it was Beth can come in and add her signature as well. And so what the system has is we're allowing multiple answers and it repeats the section within this, repeats the questions within the section. So this is really, really handy if you, let's say, receive multiple deliveries at once and you just want to add a new section to make a new delivery, or maybe if you're temperature checking multiple different items, what you can do is you can have a repeating section here. And what that will allow you to do is to kind of redo that section over and over again as you require. Now, there is one quick note in here. We can't have information panels or conditional sections within a repeating section. Hopefully that makes sense and you might be able to piece together why we don't want that. But essentially, you don't want all your instruction text to be repeating over and over when you get your reports for your auditors. So when you're adding in instructional information, we recommend putting them at the top and keeping them outside of a repeating section. Cool. I'll jump down to the bottom one here. So kind of the last section I want to take you through, and a really useful tool for some of our customers. And this is a conditional section. Now, as you might piece together by the name, this acts exactly like a section header would, with one condition on top of it. So there are a couple of ways that we can set this condition. We can have it say yes or no, and we can select which is the correct answer to open up this section. We can have it to multi-choice, or we can just have it as a checkbox. I've set it as this conditional section opens up if I say yes. So my example that I've got here is, were there any incidents reported on today? So what does this look like on the mobile app? If I say no, cool, nothing happens. The section doesn't open up and I don't require to answer any further questions here. If there was an incident report and I said, actually, no, I do need to act on this, and I say yes, we can see here that it opens up the questions within the section. So I can then upload and take a picture of the report from this panel here. So it's a way for you to kind of clean up your forms a little bit and save your staff some time from kind of answering unnecessary questions. Let's say, a delivery form, for example, you might have that scheduled every day, but some days they just don't show up. So you can keep you can make the whole form a conditional section. And so if they received a delivery form, then it opens up the form and complete it. If not, they can simply say no and save this form here. So I can say no and still hit save on this form. And it's just giving evidence that, hey, look, there actually wasn't any deliveries today, but I'm still getting a great completion rate at 100%. Cool. To sign off on a form here, as you guys will know, we've got unique pins set up for everyone. Mine aren't terribly unique on this one, but let's say AJ was completing this form here. And that allows them to sign off on this form. Cool. So that one is all saved. Hopefully I haven't lost you there. But just a couple of quick notes when making forms. We really recommend keeping them as simple and as user-friendly as possible. And so if you're making one straight from scratch, we highly recommend testing out the form first. We understand that change management is something that's hard, but we want to move and digitize all of this paperwork into our platform here. And so making really clean forms, having clear questions, using simple answer types for your staff to go and complete and fill out forms is just really, really good practice here. And so, when they go and find a form that's built beautifully, it's seamless for the staff here. It does require a little bit of onboarding, a bit of admin to begin with, but once you get quite confident, you'll be able to build forms with ease. Cool. I'm going to hit save on this form here. And so this will publish this form and update it. You can see the version number ticked up from 5 to 6 as well. And so this is how I would identify that I've made at least, 5 iterations of this form. Cool. Perfect. Hopefully I haven't lost anyone here, but that's how you would kind of adjust forms within it. The other best practice that I would direct your attention to is actually maybe customizing some of our existing master forms here. So we've built these forms in a way using the answer types that we think is best practice on the platform. Now, you might still want to then customize some of these to your own liking as well. You might want to join up some of these forms. You might want to turn off some of these forms. So I'm going to dive into that now. So if you recall, if you built some forms based off master forms before, you may recall, we can actually change the schedule of these, but we might have some locked items that we don't allow you to change. This one isn't a great example, but let me find one that's something like a proving cooking method every time. So if I go and edit this form here, we can see there are these question types that have been locked because it's a part of our master forms and it ties to reporting as well. So we've hard-coded it in. Now, a common question that we had with these master forms here is maybe you'd like the form design, but you just want to change the naming convention. The great news is we've kind of unlocked this for everyone. So even though this is a master form here, I can now edit the form name into something that I want that's relevant for my team to understand. And so you can quickly update the form name to something you're familiar with, even if it's a master form. The other thing that would be really good to do and best practice is if you'd like the format, but you want to change some of the questions within this cooking form, for example, we would recommend duplicating our master form instead. So I'm going to do this really quickly. You can see now, once I click this duplicate icon, it's changed the name to a duplicate of that said form. And all of the questions that were locked before are now unlocked because this is now a custom form just for your site. So now we can, move the questions, change the text, delete the ones that we feel like are unnecessary, and we can also add in any ones that we see fit as well. So because it's a custom form, it's fully available to you, and so you're able to, have full reign and full freedom on it. For master forms as well, you can change the scheduling, and so I might show you how to turn off a form really quickly too. So I don't want to make these changes, so I'm just going to come outside of this. Let's say, for example, in my business operations, we don't do the bathroom check. And so we want to turn this form off a schedule, and we might want to even hide the form entirely if we don't need it. We do so by editing this form here. So I'll demonstrate for you really clearly. We can search and filter by these forms. I just want to edit this cleaning bathroom check. It's scheduled daily, 12 p.m., but I don't have bathrooms on site. I click edit into this form here, and I just want to focus on turning the schedule off. Cool. So we've got this form here. When we jump down to the bottom, we can see that it's been set to a daily form. We're going to change this to none. So it's not on the daily, weekly, or monthly forms here. Now, if we want to completely hide this form and we know that, we just won't be using it at any point, we can also uncheck the toggle here in the form library. And what that means is it's not available on a schedule, nor the form library as well. So if I hit save, this form actually gets completely hidden away, and it only shows up here if I toggle the unused forms icon. So as I mentioned before, that's how you would turn off a form that you really don't require without deleting it. Cool. There is one other form that I want to demonstrate for you, and it's something that we recommend you building in, but we recommend customizing at the minimum the operational forms here. So any of your opening checks, your cleaning checks, your weekly maintenance checks as well. These ones, our master templates does just give you a really nice skeleton to build off, but we highly recommend adding to them. So something like a weekly cleaning check, we recommend editing this form here. You can have a look at the questions that we've been set up here. So this one has been set to some things on Mondays, some things on Tuesday as well. But what's really easy to do is if you just want to add additional checks to this form, all we do is we'd open up one of these questions. You can duplicate this question. Instead of the oven being cleaned, we can change this as range hood has been cleaned. When you go and hit save, the next time the form refreshes on the mobile app, this will be available in that form. And so here we can see it's, it's become a custom form for this site, and we can just add in all of our additional checklists as well. The one form I'd also like to demonstrate is kind of a induction training form. Now, training has been a huge hot topic recently. Seeing training records and your staff, auditors and verifiers really are getting a lot more strict on this, especially across FSANs. So I'll show you how to make kind of a custom induction training form. We have a couple of training master templates to build off, but these are quite bare bones, so we highly recommend customizing these to your own liking. So I want to show you what this looks like here. I've built a custom induction training form, and there's a couple of things I just want to point and make sure you get right when you're building a training form. Firstly, from the top, we want to get the category correct. So you want this to be a training form in particular, because this is how the system recognizes that, hey, if a staff member completes this form here, we want to add that to their training history. So definitely select a training form in the category here. The other one we'd want to get right is I can show you what this form looks like on the mobile app. So we've got a training form built in, custom induction training form. I've got some instruction text at the top. Complete this form before you start your first shift, and this is just going to be on basic, hygiene and food handling. The other one to get right is staff select. So this wasn't an answer type I went through before, but I'm sure you can infer what this will populate from. So after you've added all your staff list into your account, you'll be able to select from them in this form here. So I can select, let's say it was Beth or AJ completing this form here. They select their name, and that's something really crucial to get right. We do also have staff multi-select. So if you want multiple people to sign off on this training form at the same time, you can make it like that as well. But these are the two kind of key points that the system is tracking in order to add this to their training history. Now, some other things that are good to put in, a start date. So if this was their first induction form, we can have a date put in here. This automatically populates to the device's current date. Also, we can have a similar date/time as well. For some of your cooking checks, if you need a time in there, that's an option for you. Now I'll go into the full training induction form. So here I built this form out to have a multi-choice, multi-select. So I've got multiple topics to cover off for my initial induction. And so my staff member will go through this training with a supervisor or a manager, and they'll check off what they've been taught. So hand washing, contamination, keeping food cold, pests, high-risk foods, and allergens. Then they would go, cool, I've done all of these. I've also then attached a couple of resources. So those great answer types of selected resources. So I've populated a SSS template food control plan for our international customers. This is just kind of the default template for most businesses. And so I can view this, and it's actually the system is requiring me to click on this icon and review this template food control plan. Now that I've clicked on it, it's gone green. And also I've popped in another resource here, which is kind of allergens in our menu as well. So they would need to click on this icon to view the allergens specific to this business menu. Now I've just got this allergen default list on here. I'm sure you'll have a more customized allergen in your menu resource. And then I've got an employee signature. So yes, they have a pin that's going to stamp the initials on this form here. But if I wanted them to sign the form at the bottom as well, there is a signature capture icon. So I quickly sign in here. And then a supervisor then with this prompt acknowledging that I've supervised this training for the person above and another signature capture as well. So if they were a manager, they would click this icon here. Cool. They can then save this form. AJ uses his unique PIN, signs it off. And this is how the system tracks a training history for AJ. So in your staff record, I mean, this isn't really a verification or audit session here, but it'll be available within their staff record when they edit that staff user. Cool, perfect. Look, I'm conscious we're running a bit short on time here, so I might direct you to just one more location on the admin console. On the bottom right, when you're going through and you're building forms and you're making changes, you've got this little chat bubble that's available. This is actually based off our knowledge base, first and foremost. So if you're making a form here, you can find quick guides as well. So if I want to create a custom form here, I can click this little prompt and it gives me step-by-step guidance on where to go, what to do, exactly as I've taken you through today. The other great thing is you're able to search by things as well. So if I wanted to add user, and it loads up all these great articles on adding or changing users, and it gives you more clarity. We've got some videos baked in, step-by-step guides as well. So really, really helpful if you've got a quick question that you're just not sure or you want a refresher on. The other thing we have available as well is this Ask section, which links to our beautiful support team. So if you do have something that you're really struggling with and you can't find an answer for and you feel like you're running your head against the wall, reach out to us because we'll be able to help out and recommend some best practice from there. Cool, perfect. Look, I appreciate that was a lot to run through in terms of form building. I think, if you've got access to the admin and manager side, definitely have a crack. Like I said, for our New Zealand customers, it's already live on your account, so you'll be able to see exactly what I was saying. For our international and Australian clients, this is coming, I think, off the top of my head, in 3 days. So keep your eyes peeled as well. That is coming for your accounts as well. So have a look later in the week when you're customizing forms and having a play around. Cool. That kind of wraps up this part of the webinar. We're going to jump into kind of a open Q&A section here. I know some people have been in the chat, maybe asking around some questions, so we'll dive into this part now. Oh, perfect. I can see Josh has actually jumped in and answered some of these questions here. So I'll go over one with Sabrina. If we set a reminder for 8 and 12 p.m. and staff complete this form at 9, will they receive the second reminder if it's already completed, or will they only be notified if the form is still yet to be completed? I think the reminder section is actually in two parts, so it treats them kind of like individual forms there. So you'll get a reminder before 8 a.m. and you'll get another reminder before 12 p.m. So it isn't too much of a concern if the 8 a.m. was completed and you still get the reminder later in the day. We also have another question. Having single questions take time to sign off, but having lots of parts means if you're using one device, only people wanting to go to another task a staff member is working on. I do understand the kind of feedback. I think maybe it's if you've got a really long form and you need multiple staff to complete certain parts of that question. So what you can do is you can actually save all of these forms as a draft. And so I might be able to demonstrate this on the on my screen here. I mean, we do understand sometimes forms can get really long and you may have different people completing different parts of an operational form. Let's say we've got daily cleaning tasks in here as well. So I'll demonstrate what this looks like. Oh, sorry, I think might need a refresh. So the basement Wi-Fi can be a little bit hit or miss. It's asking me to sign back in. Sorry about that. Looks like a bit of a network issue on my end. But I think we can use our imaginations here. Oh no, it's loaded now. Let's see. Cool, perfect. So we can see there's lots of questions in this form to check off. If I, for example, only do these two. Sorry, my Wi-Fi is just hitting a bit of a wall here for some reason. But you can notice at the bottom here, we can actually save this form as a draft. And what that means is this one particular question, when I type in my code, is going to print my initials on it. Another staff member at a later time in the day can go in and sign off on the rest of the form and have their initials with their unique PIN code signed off on it. So yes, I think if you have singular questions you want to sign off on, it can be quite a long form sometimes. But I think just building them in with checkbox or yes or no's makes it a really easy process. And if it's a long form, they can just complete the ones that are, have been designated to them on site. Another person can come on, let's say, at a later shift and complete the rest of the forms there as well. And you'll have full kind of clarity on who's completed which part of the form. Hopefully that answers your question, but look, I'm happy to have a further chat with you, Sandra, if you've got any further questions on that one. Cool. There aren't many other Q&As available here, so thank you everyone for who stuck around to the end. I hope you enjoyed the session, and I hope it's giving you some further insights on where to go next with the form builder. Now, we are still building additional features, and that's why we've kind of made a brand new version of the form builder here. And so look forward to those as well, but we'll definitely keep you guys in the loop in future releases. Once again, some further resources. We've got a beautiful video education center with lovely short guides, and we'll also have our support email as well. So please reach out to the team if you have any queries and have any issues beyond this webinar. But yeah, thank you so much for joining. Appreciate your time. Yeah, lovely seeing the attendance, and yeah, hope you enjoyed it.